All right, so everyone, thank you so much for being here. We are here for another session of the Smith.ai Masters webinar series, and today we are talking about how to convert more law firm clients online. So I am Maddy Martin. I am the VP of Marketing at Smith.ai. We are a 24/7 virtual receptionist service, and we primarily focus on serving attorneys, solo and small firm attorneys. We do work with other industries, but that is our bread and butter. About 80% of our clients are attorneys, and we are focused on answering intake, scheduling, and doing the most what we can with those leads that are coming through, often through your website. So that's where Tori Blute is joining me today, and she is Director of Communications at LawLytics. And I will let her introduce herself, and then we'll get into today's agenda. So Tori, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. So as Maddy said, I'm the Director of Communications at LawLytics, and my real passion is really being able to show attorneys how to have a relationship with their marketing that makes sense to them, that puts them in control, and that keeps them from, wasting time or money on things that don't work. So that's a little of what we're going to talk about today. I come from a journalism background. I do a lot of our communications and marketing materials. So if you've ever listened to our podcast, you have surely heard my voice. If you've joined us for our webinars or read our blog posts, I might be familiar to you. But with that, I'm really excited to be here today. So thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. I'm so excited too. And I will just share my screen briefly, and we can talk about the agenda and then get into our session today. So the agenda, and actually I can do my slideshow. So the agenda is 5 main things, right? And we might not touch on these, sequentially, but we will cover all of these things, and with a lot of examples along the way, which, Tori and I are really excited to share with you, because that's really where you can visualize how this will help your firm, your business. So we're going to talk about where to focus your law firm's marketing efforts online, and primarily meaning your website, that property that you own, you control. You're not, beholden to whatever Facebook's algorithm is that day that allows your post to show up or not. This is your property that you are, proud to have, and that attracts quality leads through various marketing efforts. We'll also talk about the essential components of high functioning websites. And I love this, the worst offenders that degrade conversion potential. So we're not going to, use PhD terms, but what this means is, there are things that are actually hurting your chances of acquiring new leads on your website, and you might not be aware of them. And these are often really easy fixes to make. Then we'll talk about how to drive better traffic to your website, and how to convert more of those into new business, with obviously qualification being a really important step there. Asking the questions early and upfront is the most important thing that you can do to get those leads into a place where you want to follow up with those who actually come through, and then it doesn't muck up your funnel as you start to nurture them and engage them. That's a quality audience that is worth that time and effort and follow up and follow through. And then we'll talk about how to integrate your site into the rest of your practice. We'll talk about how you can use Smith.ai and LawLytics together, along with a number of other integrations, actually many of them that we share, Clio and other practice management tools. We want to make sure that from the beginning, where that lead is captured to where they're engaged, to where they, become a new record in your system for nurturing and follow up and signing that client, and then working that matter or case, that's all really seamlessly integrated. So we're going to talk about a lot around the sales funnel, the marketing funnel. And so that we're all on the same page, this is going to be presented in 2 different ways during the presentation, but this is the simplest way at first, just to talk about the simple funnel from all of your website visitors to those who come through and fill out a form. They participate in a website chat, they call in, they click that email or contact form, and they provide some of their information. They're raising their hand and they're saying, like, yes, this is for me. I've read a little bit, I've skimmed, this seems to be a fit for what I need. And can you help me, and how? Then what happens is the intake process, where more information is gathered. Then there's a consultation. oftentimes, sometimes a conflict check as well to make sure that conversation can go forward, and then hopefully a retained client. Now, what we see is there are a lot of things that will get in the way of this running smoothly. And while today's topic is really focused on the top of the funnel, attracting and engaging those leads online, it has down funnel effects if you don't do that effectively. You're going to see a much lower close rate, retained client rate, if you are allowing this to be, a stream of leads who are not well qualified. If you're letting all your website visitors who are reading some blog post, book time on your calendar without having to answer any questions about why they're a good fit and why they deserve your time. And the reason that we're so concerned about, interruptions and distractions, leaks, in the lead funnel, or things that are clogging your funnel and preventing you from focusing your time and attention on really qualified leads, there's only so much time in a day, is that the data here is showing that this is happening to all business owners. Everyone is too busy getting inundated with the new normal, which is your reach is far and wide when you've got your website set up, you've got a social presence. Sometimes you attract a bit more noise than you actually want, and it's hard to figure out, what noise is good noise and what noise is just noise or spam noise. So consumers are expecting an instantaneous response. The vast majority of them are saying, whether it is a sales or service or support inquiry, frankly, even though we're just focused on sales, this is really across both sales and support. They're saying, I expect an instant response. Amazon can send me stuff in one day. Why can't I get a fast response from a law firm? Like, our experiences with Uber and Amazon and the world of DoorDash and Instacart, like, those inform how we set our expectations for all of our other service providers. So this is definitely relevant for the law firm owner, for the business owner. Now, we also know that 50% of lead generation budgets are wasted on leads who are never contacted. So often what happens is we get this onslaught of leads who come through and everyone wants a fast response. We also have work to do during the day. We're running a business, we're managing teams, we're working, as an attorney, you're working cases, you're doing research, you're in court. Oftentimes these lead gen budgets get wasted on leads who are never contacted. And as a result, it's not like that person said, oh, never mind, I don't have a case, I don't have a matter, there's nothing to do here. They go and work with someone else. They go to the competitor. And the thing that is most fixable here that I'm really optimistic about, and we see change all the time, is that this is something that you can literally turn the knob on today and say, I'm not going to waste budget. I'm going to be super responsive. And in that fast response, ask questions to figure out who is a good fit to move forward in the conversation, and then only focus my time on those. And I'm going to automate a lot of that up front. So what I show up for in person and with my team, we are personable and attentive to a smaller viable pool of leads who actually can move forward. So it's no surprise that the vast majority of leads don't convert into sales, but you don't need all of the leads to convert into sales. You need the viable leads to have a conversation with you, and those who are the right fit, the vast majority of those will convert into sales. So if you own the process up front, you are very likely to succeed. And I know many law firm owners who I talk to, I was just at ABA Tech Show, a lot of people are saying, even to this day, whether it was during COVID or now we're coming out of COVID, they're saying, if I can just get that consultation, I know that I can win that client. Well, that's the problem we're going to talk about today. You're not getting all of those consultations that you possibly could because you're not responsive up front, which can easily be automated or outsourced. And then you're not asking the right questions. So people are generating a lot of noise, but they don't really know how to prepare or how to be ready for that first conversation with you. So as your marketing spend goes up, if you're used to just getting referrals and then you start trying to improve your online presence, you might feel like, wow, this quality isn't what I was expecting. These are not slam dunk clients as I'm used to, because everyone is, super high quality. And now, I'm feeling a little bit of dilution. So before you get to that point, if you're already at that point, this is really important to pay attention to. Now, at the same time, we want to take out those spam calls. We want to take out the sales calls that are going to also distract from your day, and make sure that you're not calling back voicemails, because we know that about half of incoming calls are answered, which means cue the phone tag, right? Like, how are you going to get back in touch with these people? If you haven't immediately captured them, they're likely on to the next firm on Google search, on their, Facebook group recommendations list. They are largely lost, also because we don't follow up with them more than once. So we'll talk about that as well, how you can actually have more control there. So, what is the end result here? The result is that the firms who really lean in see strong returns, not just on immediate impact of more clients overall, but then more spend as well for those clients who, for those firms who actually engage more online. So if you're looking at your website and you're only thinking, well, how can I capture the most leads? I would also look at the advice that like Tori and I are going to share today and say, how does this actually benefit my existing clients? If I have subscription or flat fees or online bill pay, can I add a button for that on my website? Can I use website chat as a way of getting answers to clients who need them? Can I use my phone as a way to, get calls from clients and have them talk to a receptionist instead of trying to fill up my inbox with questions about their case status? There are a lot of things that you can do to give access that make clients very happy, in addition to capturing leads that we'll talk about today. And I think the most interesting statistic here that is the same 67% for both leads and clients is 67% of clients base their decision to hire on a firm's initial responsiveness. So if you add in these responsive features on your website, calls, chats, text-enabled phone numbers, that lead is likely to hire you if they can just get in touch with you. That's the single biggest determining factor. At the same time, it's also 67% of customers who say that they are spending up to 14% more just because they received excellent service. And so often excellent service doesn't mean I had a long meeting with my attorney. It means I actually was able to get in touch with a human being who told me, we see you, we'll get back to you. They don't have to have the answer, but they just have to feel like someone is listening to them and attending to them. So if you feel like, oh, it's the burden of having to solve every problem right in that moment, that's really not the case. Great service is often just a synonym for responsiveness, right? And that's part of what we're going to talk about today. So as we get into the next section, which is really like the meat of it with Tori's advice, because this is what she lives and breathes every day, I want you to keep in mind one thing, which is your cost of acquisition largely does not have to change here at the very top, where you're spending, a few hundred, probably, maybe a few $1,000s a month on your top of funnel, on generating those leads, on generating those website visitors. That top line number does not have to change if you take some advice and you see more leads, more qualified opportunities, more scheduled appointments that have already answered a few basic questions about, what they're looking for from your business, from your firm, right? So if you have the same 1,000 visitors that are being generated and you're able to double your lead volume, if you're able to double your qualified opportunities, well, you're going to see more consultations. You're going to see more retained clients. If you change nothing else in your process, your percentage conversion rates are the same at each step, then you'll realize, before I, pour more money on this like leaky bucket, I actually want to figure out what is my optimum funnel, so that when I spend more money, I know that I'm not losing a portion of that I could be reclaiming. This is where to focus right now. If I still stick at the same visitor level, how many more leads could I be getting that I'm losing? And how can I do that with simple tweaks to my website that allow me to communicate more effectively, have my message and brand come through, and proactively sort of engage and attract the right clients. So there is a worksheet here for you. We will share this deck at the end if you want to do that exercise yourself. But without further ado, let's talk about some of these best practices, Tori. I'll stop sharing my screen and then you can go ahead and share yours.
Let me go ahead, switch this over here. Can we all see that?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. So I want to start this discussion just by talking about one simple fact, which is that 3/4 of small law firm owners say that their marketing is a challenge. The one common thread that we see most often throughout all of this is that they don't have some kind of systematized approach to their marketing. And one of the things that we see is that that can a lot of times leak into other areas of their practice as well, whether it's intake, practice management, you name it. So what I want to say here is that the firms that not only survive, but end up thriving in the marketplace, and quite frankly, in a very competitive marketplace, understand a couple key things. One, they understand how their potential clients find attorneys online. And I think, with the pandemic and all of the ways that the pandemic has accelerated the use of technology, this is more true than ever. We go online to find everything. It's also understanding how those potential clients search, what they need to build trust, and essentially also what they want to experience. What happens from there is those firms then act accordingly, provide that client-centric sort of model that encourages engagement. So once you know what this looks like, creating a website that does a lot of heavy lifting for your firm, both on the side of marketing as well as practice management and lots of other areas, becomes a whole lot easier. So let's talk about these in detail just a little bit here. Actually, I want to go back just one because I want to talk about these one by one. Let's talk first about how potential clients actually find attorneys. And I will preface this by saying, when you are looking for a doctor, how do you decide who you're going to choose? You might ask a friend or a family member for a referral. Maybe you use an online directory. Maybe you conduct a Google search about a specific doctor, or maybe questions related to some of your symptoms or the health issue that you're experiencing. But the thing that I want to point out here is that when potential clients look for attorneys, they do the same thing. They will ask someone for a referral. Maybe they go to directories, but most, if not all of them, are going to do some type of online research about either you directly or their case or their matter. So when potential clients are doing that research, my question for you is, what are they going to find? What information are they going to find about you? What are they going to find about their legal problems and what they can do next about it? And this is where having a very robust, client-friendly web presence is going to come into play. Your website is going to be one of the first things that your potential clients may see about you. It should be one of the first things that they see about you. So this is a situation where, as I said, consumers are really doing almost everything online. We have seen this accelerate during the pandemic, and that means you really want to focus your marketing efforts on the things that you own and control online. Your law firm's website is the foundation of all of this, and we'll talk about how it plays into the rest of your practice in just a moment. So, what do potential clients need from you to build trust? A highly visible web presence is going to be key to your law firm's marketing. If your website is not easily found in Google searches, you want to make sure that you focus your effort on your online visibility. You want something that's easy for potential clients to find and that is ultimately trusted by search engines. Once a potential client is on your site, what do they need from you there? More than ever, and I think Maddy is probably going to hammer this home as well, but marketing and communication, this is all about relationship building. Trust really forms when potential clients have the right information in the right layout at the right time to sort of make that informed decision. So from a website perspective, building trust also matters to Google. When you have a site that has really useful, relevant information, those things tend to rise to the top of search, which makes sense. That's Google's business model, right? If we were to use Google and we type in a query and we can't get the information that we need, we wouldn't use it. But Google is very, very good at sussing out the most interesting, valuable, educational information and returning it to us when we make those searches. So information about you, about how you can help potential clients solve their problems, that should really make up the foundation of your website. So are you providing information about your firm's services and your practice areas? Are you providing information about your firm's mission? Do you have reviews from happy former clients? If not, now is the time to really start developing those. So you are building a website that's a really rich information resource for those potential clients. So I just want to say here that your website's information is going to be most likely the single biggest driver of search engine rankings, visitors, and leads, because Google is in that business of connecting searchers to the most useful information. It depends primarily on text to figure out whether a website is actually going to be a good resource for a search query. And the higher its confidence is in your content, the higher it's going to rank that content. That takes time to develop, but when potential clients can actually find that information and have the information that they need to solve that problem or reach out to you, the more confidence they're going to have in actually reaching out to your firm when it's time to consult an attorney. So the last thing that I want to say here about what they want to experience: potential clients do not visit law firm websites to be entertained. They have a problem, they are looking for answers. So when they visit your website, is your website confusing? Does it distract in any sort of way? Does it weaken their confidence in your firm? So much like the information on your website needs to be client-centered, the design of your site also needs to be client-centric. Potential clients are subconsciously looking at your design to figure out, does this firm care about me? Do they care about my problem? So your design needs to cater to their needs. It should be easy to view, easy to navigate, easy to understand. It needs to guide them from one thing to the next. It needs to facilitate contact in a number of different ways where you're providing, a number of different exit points, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But if your site is slow to load, if it is distracting or confusing, you really want to focus your efforts on creating a site that is going to put their needs, your clients' needs, front and center. So let's move on to the next slide here and talk a little bit about the essential components of high functioning websites. As I said, the best websites are going to make it easy for potential clients to understand what you do, how you can help them, and ultimately to convert when it's time. So you really want to provide a high quality user experience. And that's where we're going to talk about familiarity. We'll talk about making your firm approachable and making your site actionable. You'll also want to highlight a really clear brand and a really clear message. So we're going to talk about providing value through the creation of educational content, which, hint, is really just as easy as every time when you pick up the phone with a potential client or when you're sitting, face to face with somebody, it's basically translating those conversations into the written word. So we'll talk about that in just a little bit here. We also want to talk about making the information on your site straightforward and also demonstrative. So that is where things like reviews are really going to come into play. This is a situation where you want to be able to say, don't just take my word for it, have a look at people who have worked with me previously and see how happy they are. And of course, being fast and mobile friendly and responsive. And when I talk about responsivity, I mean two different things, and we'll get into that in a moment. But let's go ahead and look at the breakdown here. So making sure your site is familiar and approachable and actionable. Make it easy for visitors to use your website. It needs to be easy to navigate. You want to be sure you're using conventional, simple navigation. Potential clients who get lost on your site are likely to leave it. And the reason for that is because, again, this is what the internet has trained us to do. If it's too hard to use a site, we'll simply go elsewhere because that's what we are trained to do essentially. We know that there is some other site out there that is going to, answer our questions. So we're going to go find it. But the first thing I want to talk about is this idea of streamlining your navigation. Intuitive navigation starts with good, what is called information architecture. So kind of like, if you have a messy bedroom, for example, websites have this habit of accumulating a lot of stuff over time. Stakeholders in a lot of cases aren't sure, where new features or pages should go. Structures tend to kind of balloon. And then in the end, everything becomes kind of cluttered and unusable. So users who arrive at your site should be able to scan the contents of your navigation immediately. So having navigation items, like the example that I've got here, everything out on display really helps people understand what it's all about. It gives them kind of an early idea of whether your site is right for them. From here, it's really about consolidating and prioritizing, I would say. So this is really about just thinking through the types of problems that your potential clients have, and then addressing those problems on your site directly, and then organizing them in a way that makes sense. So as a rule that I sometimes like to employ, I sometimes call this the 3-click test. Can somebody find the information that they're looking for in 3 clicks or fewer? It's a good way to see kind of how structured or how messy your navigation is, and maybe kind of do an audit where you can clean it up. So let's talk about clearly addressing your services and how you can help. One of the things we like to talk about here is when a potential client visits your site, can they immediately determine who you are, where you are, and what you do? If they can get those 3 things down right away, you're in good shape. One of the things that we see most often is just kind of a lack of clarity when people are creating their law firm's website about that type of information. Those are table stakes items, right? We want to make sure that those are up front and center and that people know, is this person actually able to help me? They shouldn't have to do any work to figure that out. Personalized CTAs. CTA, acronym for call to action. On each of your pages, you want to think about customizing that CTA at the end of a page to the specific problem or the specific persona that you're trying to target. It's a really good way to guide them to whatever that next step is that you want them to take. Whether it is, signing up for a newsletter, contacting your firm, downloading something, whatever that is, you want that reader to understand, if they were to read nothing else on the page, that you understand the specific problem that they have and that you can assist them. So that's one thing to think about. And then, of course, easy contact, however it is set up on your site. And you usually want multiple points of contact here, whether it is a chat function, whether it's submitting a form, whether it is calling your firm. You want to think about things like click to call phone numbers, right? We more and more frequently are seeing people use mobile devices to reach out to law firms. So you're just kind of eliminating the access costs, I guess I would say, where if somebody has to memorize that phone number on their phone and then type it into their phone, that's more effort than they should have to engage in. That click to call phone number means they just click that button and it dials your firm. No extra effort necessary. Very, very easy to make that decision to contact your firm. With contact forms, you want to think about when they submit that form, do they know what happens next? Make sure when they submit that form, they then receive a page that says something to the effect of, thanks for contacting our firm. We get in touch with you whatever period of time it is, very, very quickly being the operative part here. And then, of course, if you have things like chat features where you can have somebody having a real-time conversation with them, where you have, an intake process that makes it easy for people to get back to your potential clients. Because again, the fastest people here are going to win. This is both in terms of the information that you're providing and all of the follow-up that comes with it. So let's talk a little bit about information. Providing information is one thing, making it easy to understand for your potential clients is another. And you want to keep in mind that a lot of your potential clients, in the vast majority of cases, don't come from a legal background. So there is a very good chance they are intimidated by their legal issue. They are struggling to understand what it all means. And that's why you want to be sure that your website provides not only a lot of information, but information that is very clear and that is simple enough for anyone to understand. So the first thing that I like to point out is that when you create pages, whether they are detailed practice area pages or blog posts, whatever the case is, write them in plain English. Avoid legalese where you can. If you need to use legal terminology, just be sure to back it up with some kind of plain English explanation and maybe some kind of illustrative example. So we sometimes hear from attorneys who want to use a lot of really flashy design elements, things like video backgrounds, a lot of moving items. And there are some cases where those elements can be really attractive and part of an engaging, well-designed website. If you have too many of them, there's a really good chance you're going to distract and overwhelm your visitors, and you're going to take away from the content itself, which is the most important part of your website. So with that said, I want to say that, no matter how kind of cool or pretty a design element is, if it causes your pages to load slowly or distract or whatever the case is, there's a really good idea you want to leave it out of the actual design itself. It's just going to be more distracting than anything and frustrating to your users. So if you're not sure about a design element and you're kind of thinking to yourself, is this something that I want to use? Ask yourself this: does it provide a better experience for your users? Does it make your website easier to use? Does it keep visitors engaged with your content? Does it make them ask those next questions, want to take those next steps? If it doesn't, there's a really good chance that you just want to keep it out of your website. It's probably too flashy or too distracting. So
I just want to,
go
Tori, I just want to add one little thing here, because like, as soon as you say like flashy, distracting, I don't know about everyone else, but I always think of like going on my phone and trying to find a recipe for something I want to make for dinner or bake for the next day. And if you ever go on a food website, the ads, I mean, just bring me to the recipe, right? It's like the same thing. If you just think the person who is on your website is feeling strongly, just show me the intake form. Like, for those who actually know they are in the right place, get them to the right place. And for those who are not sure if they're in the right place, get them the simplest information that you possibly can in the clearest way. And then they'll know they're in the right place and they'll be hunting for that intake form, right? But it's like the desire for me to find a recipe on a food website, it's a disaster. You have to scroll to the end. You have tons of pop-up ads. My finger could barely touch the screen without hitting an ad. I mean, and think about how long it takes to load a page like that with so many interruptions. So simpler is better, and using language that anyone can understand is also better. That's not the time to convey your expertise, is by using the biggest words, right? Let that happen in the consultation. Be clear and simple upfront.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring up the recipe example. I, as an almost default response now, will have my thumb in the ready position to close out the pop-up ads that are inevitably going to come up. It's
because
like
half the screen, right? Yeah.
And this is a perfect example of how well trained we are to avoid it. We have ad blindness or like ad aversion in so many different ways. So exactly, the more upfront that you can be with the information that matters most, conveyed in the right way, in the simplest format, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah, and I mean, the last thing there is also, if you use that example and you say, well, how are those sites ranking so high on Google, Tori, right? Like, how is it possible that with all those interruptions, everything I've heard about SEO says that the user experience matters more now to SEO than ever, to the Google crawl bots, whatever. Well, how are those sites like getting like first, second, third page rank in huge search terms, chicken parmesan, right? Like, that's beating out anything that like a law firm is probably going to rank for individually. But what we see is that across categories, like the parameters are different. So Google's expectations for what a law firm's website experience should be is definitely different from what a recipe site's website experience should be, right? So if it is something that you are investigating, if it's a professional service, you can't get away with the same things that they can and still rank. So it's not just for the user experience, it's also for that bot experience to not have to claw through everything on your website until they get to the meat of it.
Yeah, and in fact, it's interesting that you bring that up, Maddy, because law firm websites are designated by Google as what are referred to as your money or your life pages. Now, why they call them that is for the specific reason that if someone finds information on a law firm website and follows that advice or that direction, that's a whole lot more serious than if you mess up your chicken parmesan recipe. So, which I'm yet to find a good one. So if you found a good one that doesn't have a lot of
I'll
ads,
send
let
you
me
one
know.
later.
But really, no, this is really about, for medical websites, for law firm websites, for financial websites, the parameters are different. Things are weighted differently, and Google's really looking for the best and the most educational information here, presented in the way that makes the most sense and provides the most value to users. So speaking of value, we can talk a little bit about the kind of demonstrative elements of law firm websites. So the content itself goes a really long way. Whether it's, practice area pages like you see here. This is a estate planning website, and I'll show you this one as an example in a little bit because I really love it. But this is also a matter of, can you illustrate to your potential clients that people have had a really fabulous experience with you? So reviews from happy former clients go a really long way toward building confidence. They are increasingly important to potential clients. They're sort of more important to everyone now. We look up reviews for almost anything. And you want to just make it a habit. If you can bake it into the closing of your files, where every time you're closing a file, you go ahead and ask for that review, use tools to make it easy, you are going to be in good shape. So if you haven't started doing that yet, now is really the time to do that. And when you can, and I know some practice areas are a little bit more sensitive than others where you may not always have the opportunity, but when you can, if you can tie those reviews back to, say, a related case result, a related victory, a related win, whatever it is, those are two really fantastic ways just to demonstrate not only from the client side that you did a great job, but also in terms of the related case result. So last thing I want to talk about here is really a table stakes item at this point, that your site is fast, responsive, and secure. You want to be sure that your website loads quickly. Slow loading sites are going to cause people to avoid your website. They will avoid engaging with you. If your site features heavy elements that cause it to load slowly, remove them. This goes back to what we were saying about design. You don't want to let those elements, added elements, I should say, gunk up the experience for your users. It's going to make your site load more slowly. It's going to distract from the content and so on. Have a responsive website. This is where responsive elements can mean two different things. One is that people are going to access their website from all types of different devices. So whether it is a laptop, a desktop, a smartphone, a tablet, you want to make sure that your law firm's website performs well and is quite usable on devices of any size. The other aspect of responsivity just has to do with communicating. Whether it is the content that you're writing, you want to clearly explain things. And as I said, if you want to explain them much like you would when you have somebody sitting across from you at the desk or in a Zoom meeting, as the case might be these days, you just really want to be sure that everything you're saying is explaining to the point that it is sufficient for the person on the other side of that screen to really understand more about their problem, more about the complexity of the issue, and more about what they need to do next. And then it's also about those other elements of being responsive. If they submit a form, how fast are you going to contact them? If they call you, can they get a hold of somebody right away? Do you take consultations at extended hours, or do you have someone available, 24/7? Whatever that is, be sure that you are outlining that on your site. And of course, a secure website at this point is essential. Security builds trust, both on the part of the user and on the part of Google. If your website does not have a valid security certificate that is up to date and universally applied throughout your website, do it now. Those are the things that I want to talk about here in terms of degrading conversion potential, and I'll get through these pretty fast. This is really just about failure to understand what potential clients need and want from a website. So they're really kind of the inverse of what we were talking about earlier. So lack of familiarity. Sometimes we see attorneys who decide that they want some kind of really novel presentation on their website as kind of the unique differentiator. But the problem with trying to showcase this is that it stands directly at odds with what potential clients are used to. You want to give them something that's very, very familiar. That is what the internet has trained us to do at this point. Lack of relevant information. This isn't going to make it hard to just convert new clients. It's going to make it hard for them to find you in the first place. In order for Google to return your website in search results, it needs relevant information. It needs that content that's going to match the queries that your potential clients are making. Lack of responsiveness. Again, this is one of two things. Either your design isn't responsive and people are struggling to use it on multiple devices, or it's a problem in terms of communication. This is like the #1 bar complaint for clients, is that their attorney is not a good communicator. So any way that you can get in front of this is really, really important. And you can also use your site, to manage client expectations too. But upfront, you just want to be sure that they know how quickly you are going to respond to them. Lack of substance and value. Again, this really goes to the creation of content that doesn't read like ad copy, that's really centered around their problem, their issue, how to solve it, how your firm can help. So driving better traffic to your site, this is about systematizing it, focusing on what works and the metrics that matter. A lot of times we will see situations where an attorney will focus solely on traffic without considering whether that traffic is actually the traffic that they want in the first place, people who are actually viable clients for their firm. So it's important to understand the difference between those two things. And then you want to be sure that as you're creating content, Rome was not built in a day. It's something that takes time. The sooner you get started and the sooner you dedicate just a little bit of time, every day or every week, just to create a new page, a new post, something of value, that tends to pay dividends over time. So the sooner you start and the sooner you really create a schedule for yourself to do that, the better off you are going to be. In terms of things to build, your attorney bios, your about the firm page, testimonials, case results, your practice area pages, blog posts, and then any other relevant information. So you want to offer that content when it is relevant to a search. And if you want to figure out what people in your area are actually searching for related to your practice area, start doing some Google searches and actually check out the related search section that Google gives you. That is a fantastic way to get started on information that's actually relevant to people in your area. And then from there, it's really about assessing and refining. So this is a diagram that I pulled from a case study that we did. This is from the law office of Richard Lawson, who is a criminal defense attorney in the Atlanta, Georgia area. And this is a really good example of what happens when you start systematizing something. So for a while, he was working with an agency, and I think he had about 10 different websites at the time. And they were all sort of fighting against each other, essentially. He'd really kind of spread his marketing efforts too thin. He couldn't really pay attention to any one site. And you can see here in this diagram that his site's got some traffic, and this is the aggregate traffic from all of them, but not a whole lot of traction. But when he switched over to LawLytics, he had one site focused on building the content there, and he built all of it himself, and it is really a sight to see, and I'll show it to you. But ultimately started getting a lot more sessions and being able to pull a lot more viable clients from that traffic. So I just wanted to show this as a quick example here. So converting more visitors into paying clients. Design for your potential clients, not for what you think is, prettiest or the most interesting. Keep in mind what they are looking for and why they're there. So simpler is better generally. Your design ought to support your message and your branding. You want to focus on content and client experience. What information do they need from you to take that next step and understand more about their case or their matter? Make it a snap to reach out, multiple points of contact. Form, click to call phone numbers. You may want to use something like chat. There's a variety of different ways to integrate this stuff into your site and make it work. And then be sure that you have fast turnaround for follow-up. Again, the most responsive individuals are going to be the winners here. So integrating your site into the rest of your practice, there is a huge diverse number of integrations that you can use along with your website to make your practice more productive, to be a better communicator, and so on. This is just a tiny little list here, but there are, social media integrations if you want to push your content out on social media and drive traffic back to your website. Chat, obviously. Practice management, where you can push forms to your practice management software so you can avoid things like Scrivener's errors and just make sure everything is in one place. Payment portals. This is a great way to train your clients that your website is kind of the central hub for everything that they need, whether they need to ask a question, whether they need to make a payment, whether they need to submit some type of form. That can really be the foundation of your web presence, I should say, and also your practice to some degree. If you need to create forms through questionnaires, lots of different integrations here. We've seen some really good examples in estate planning recently. And of course, analytics. If you want to take a really deep dive and maybe use something like Google Analytics, there are lots of integrations you can use to attach to your website. All around, the idea here is you want to create a better and more integrated experience for your practice, for your clients, and create something that is a really all around better experience for everyone that's much more efficient, it's much more productive, and that really allows you to run your practice in the way that you want to run it. So with that, I want to quickly show you a handful of examples that I have here. Hopefully we can see this, of sites that do this really, really well. So this is one example. This is Cumberland Legacy Law in Crossville, Tennessee. They have tons of practice area pages related to a variety of different topics, lots of content related to understanding each of these topics. They actually did something really clever that I love, which is they divided this section up by life stages. So whether you are single, whether you're getting married, whether you're planning on having children, estate planning is really for everybody. And this is one of those things that's often difficult to get across. This does it really, really well. There's a section for planning during peak earning years. So all sorts of things that really encourage engagement with this firm. Lots of different resources. They have their testimonials here and so on. This is another one here. This is the Cates Law Group in Massachusetts, and David Cates handles business matters. And he's got a really fantastic attorney bio. He actually wrote his own client bill of rights, essentially, to really explain how important his clients are to him. He really said that he wanted to be accessible and responsive. To that end, he has a chat feature right here, among other things. He, really wants to take responsibility for his clients. He wants to be creative and effective, provide greater value at less cost. A lot of really interesting stuff to learn about him here. But this is just one example of what you can do. And again, we have abundant ways to contact him: email, phone, contact, forms here, and so on. The last one that I want to show you here is the Lawson & Berry firm. So this is the example that I was showing you before with Richard Lawson. This is a site dedicated to criminal defense. He has pages dedicated to every county that he takes cases in, where you can find information for any county in basically, I think probably all of Georgia, but lots of different information just based on what you need, where you are, and the case that you are facing. So with that, I'm going to go ahead. I think that's my last slide before I pass it back over to you. And I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. There we go. And I'll pass it back to you, Maddy.
Yeah, and actually, yeah, I know that we're getting a little bit short on time, but I do want to just continue for a second that those examples that you're sharing, because those, I already shared page 3 invite insights in the chat. That's exactly along the lines of what we recommend as well. Like, and think about what's sticky on the page. So if you notice in Tori's example, there was a phone number on the bottom right that showed up no matter how you scroll. On this website, we have a sticky header. So we see the phone number and schedule your consultation. Look at that fanciness right there. That actually stays at the top throughout. And also these categories like that global nav, as we see it, that stays throughout. But interestingly, what we don't often see that I absolutely think is a best practice is we also have this contact form on the right that is stuck on the page as well. So what could I possibly need to take action that I don't have right at my fingertips right here? The only thing that we might find is, and also remarkably, there's actually a site search, which you never see anymore, which is very interesting, is can you call or text this number? So when we were thinking about, your phone systems and your responsiveness on a website, it's really important that you also have enabled the actions that people plan to take that we know they're going to take. So people are expecting your phone number, this phone number, any phone number on a website to be text enabled. So if you don't know if that is text enabled, try and text your phone number, check your VoIP system, and hopefully it's not your personal cell phone that's posted on your website. Make sure that those messages are getting through, and that if you have call tracking, that those numbers are correct for the websites where they're listed on. So do you know where the website visitor came from? If someone calls this number, there are dynamic settings that can be added to your website that can show different numbers here. They actually mask your main business number, and that will tell you where the source of that lead was from. So if they come from organic search, if they come from a paid ad, from Facebook, from a mailer, and they call that phone number, that can actually be used in a program like What Converts or CallRail, which you might have heard. It can tell me the source of that phone call that came through. And you can see for Smith.ai, we've got a number of calls here just today, just before this session. We've got calls that are lasting 8, 5, 3, 8 minutes. Like, those are really quality calls that are coming through organic, Google My Business, direct. We have a very short URL, Smith.ai, so people will visit us directly. And I'm not showing lead data here because that's personally identifiable information. But the point is, just from making a phone call, I can actually see where that person came through. As we know, website traffic can be sourced, but phone numbers, and we know that for law firms, phone calls are a pretty high volume and common way of people getting in touch. In addition to these contact forms, you want to make sure that you know who is calling and not just who is clicking. And if they text you from that number, you'll also be able to track that as well. So don't just think about like, this is the website setup that I have. It's really well organized, it's really visible. But after they take that action, you know who took that action, and can you repeat more of those actions based on that data that you're collecting? So if I know that organic search is driving quality leads, then I'm going to spend more time on content, as Tori is saying. If I know that these advertisements that I'm putting up on search are helping me skip rank, if I'm not on page 1, I can get on page 1 and I can pay for that placement on search. Are those converting well enough to get you your money back, to have it be a profitable source of new leads? That's what you need to be tracking when you start to think about what are the optimizations that I can make. I need ways to get that data, and that's where What Converts and CallRail easily come in. Now, the other thing that I want to focus on is just screening and intake forms and scheduling. Often we get really bogged down with, well, what are the systems that I can use for scheduling appointments? Let's say that I'm back on this website and I want to schedule a consultation. If I click on this button, maybe I'm not able to do that. Let's say that I go to the contact form and I schedule a consultation, and I get to a page that looks like this. This is a different guy, Joey Vitale, and he's got Calendly plugged in here to his website. Now, I've got an interesting thing that's happening here. I've got a little blurb description. I've got a booking that I can make here myself. I can add guests, I can put in my phone number and website, but then I actually have, and I love how Joey does this, an intake form that's embedded into Calendly. It asks really important questions like, what's the, action to be done here? What's the word or phrase you want to trademark as a trademark attorney? Like, what actually are we going to be working on? How soon are you looking to start? Like, what is your expectation and timing? If someone comes through for a criminal defense case and says, I'm doing court tomorrow morning and here it is 3 o'clock in the afternoon, what's the likelihood that you're going to, go ahead and move forward with that case? Also, are they aligned on price? Package prices begin at $1,500. Are you ready to make this investment? How did you hear about us? Did someone tell you? Please write their name. We like to thank our referrals, and that will help them with their recall. If you just say, how did you hear about us? And you don't say that second part about, thanking their referrals, most people are not going to be motivated to really rack their brain or write down something specific. So give them that social indication that you really do care. And then is there anything else that's important for them to know? They're also asking if you've seen our Facebook ads, and some of these might be modular. You might say, right now in March 2022, we're testing Instagram, and we're going to change that to Instagram to see if we can get any indication of whether or not our consultations are coming in more from that channel now. We already have our Facebook data. And this is a perfect example of a 1-2 punch of scheduling an intake in one fell swoop through Calendly that allows you to get all of that information. You're not letting someone book on your website willy-nilly, and you're allowing someone who actually might need a non-phone call, non-verbal communication method, where chat is also a very good source of that. Imagine there's a domestic violence situation or child custody or divorce where that person actually might feel unsafe or unable to have a phone call in front of other people. It might be inappropriate, an elderly parent who you're calling on behalf of. So think about how these tools actually improve access to legal and allow them to be comfortable enough to reach out to your firm to ask for help from an attorney. The last thing that I'll share, and actually, second to last thing that I'll share. So Tori mentioned, chat as a way of gathering leads. It's also a great content piece. People ask questions in chat that are really meaty when it comes to adding content to your website. So oftentimes we can't see the search terms that come through Google, but what we can see are the entire chat transcripts where they ask all those questions, and those often mirror what they were asking on Google search. So go through those transcripts, see what questions are coming up, and see if it's possible to build out content from there. And then following up is so important. So when we see, a website like this, we've got a phone number, we've got different mechanisms for getting in touch. They obviously have multiple offices. It's really important that we're following up at least 6 times so that we know that we have exhausted all reasonable attempts to get in touch with that lead. Just less than 50% of leads are going to convert on that first call. And then we get to a 93%, conversion, 93% confidence that we have converted all potential leads that are viable here by the 6th call. So if I'm taking a huge jump of 20%, another 10% jump, another 5% jump, every time I make one more call, that's how much better my lead conversion is getting. You better believe that those calls are going to happen, and they don't have to happen with your firm. They could absolutely happen through a service like Smith.ai, who's handling that for law firms. Now, I know we're at time. Tori, just really briefly, I know you mentioned on a LawLytics site, you can add Smith.ai chat. Now, there is a way to do this shown here in this deck with, adding in the code yourself. Smith.ai will also do this for you for free. So if you give us a temporary password and then you'll change it after, we can actually go ahead and install this for you. So you don't have to become a technologist overnight. And then that would work obviously well with the integrations that you already have with other programs like Clio, et cetera, that we both actually integrate with.
Yeah, absolutely. Same is true on our end. If you're a LawLytics member and you want to use Smith.ai, just give us a jingle. We will get you access
Awesome.
to coding whatever you need and get that all squared away for you pretty quickly, probably during the duration of a phone call.
Cool.
Yeah, that said, we have special pricing for our webinar registrants. Thank you so much for joining us. Visit this page and I will put the link in chat to see our special pricing, and you can also sign up for a quick personalized demo. It's a lot of fun. Let me go ahead and I'll put that link in here.
Awesome.
Chat, there we go.
Yeah, and while you're doing that, we will also send a follow-up for everyone who joined us today to get in touch with either of our teams if you're interested in learning more. Obviously, Smith.ai is here as your omni-channel solution, meaning that we handle not just calls, inbound and outbound, but also chats, texts, Facebook messages. So you can have the peace of mind that you're responsive on every critical channel. And we're not using scripts. We are handling things with a process to sound natural and in-house, just like a staff member would, integrating with the solutions that you rely on, like LawLytics, like Clio and Lawmatics in my case, and all these other wonderful tools that are available to attorneys and beyond. And of course, there is a risk-free 14-day trial. So you can start us and see how it works when we are handling calls, whether they come through your website, a referral, or any source. And you will get, no, that's not a typo. You will get $100 off with promo code LawLytics100. And of course, we are always available by phone, chat, text 24/7 on Smith.ai. And if you have questions, I know that we're out of time right now, but you are welcome to send us an email, or of course, you can email our team at hello@smith.ai or head over to LawLytics and ask some questions directly as well.
Great. Maddy, thank you so much for having us today. We really appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. It was great to learn from you, everyone. I hope that you were able to get some key takeaways today, and we look forward to seeing you again soon in another one of these sessions. Until then, take care. Thank you.